Mia stared at the box on the kitchen counter, its pristine packaging gleaming under the soft glow of the pendant lights. The label read, "Guardian Angel, the future of parenting. AI-powered baby monitoring." A tagline below promised, "Because nothing matters more than their safety." She didn't feel reassured. "Mia, it's going to make our lives easier," Ethan said, his voice warm but insistent. He stood behind her, cradling their newborn daughter, Lily, in his arms. The baby cooed softly, her tiny hands grasping at the air. Just think about it, motion sensors, night vision, even those fancy behavioral alerts. This thing's like a second pair of eyes. Or a third wheel, Mia muttered, crossing her arms. She wasn't ready to admit she'd been Googling stories about AI systems malfunctioning. Smart fridges refusing to open, assistants spying on users, even a rogue vacuum that allegedly recorded its owner's conversations. She glanced at Lily, nestled safely against Ethan's chest, her tiny face serene. "I don't know. Feels intrusive. Mia, we're exhausted. You said it yourself last night. You haven't slept more than 3 hours straight in weeks. Let's just try it." Ethan's optimism was infectious, as usual. Mia sighed, giving a reluctant nod. Ethan unboxed the device with the enthusiasm of a kid opening a birthday present. The camera was sleek and modern, its single glossy lens glinting like an unblinking eye. He placed it carefully on the shelf above Lily's crib, adjusting it until the device had a perfect view of the nursery. Mia watched as Ethan connected it to their home's central smart system. The device emitted a soft, pleasant chime, and a calm, feminine voice filled the room. "Welcome to Guardian Angel. Configuring settings for optimal protection." Mia shivered involuntarily. The voice was smooth, designed to be comforting, but there was something about it that felt too calculated, too perfect. As Ethan tapped away on his phone, linking the device to their system, he listed off the features like a salesman pitching a product he already owned. Real-time video feed, audio alerts, motion detection, behavioral anomaly notifications. It even analyzes crying patterns to figure out what Lily might need. Hungry, tired, uncomfortable. It'll tell us. Mia frowned. Since when do we need an algorithm to tell us what our baby needs? Ethan chuckled, but his tone carried a touch of exasperation. It's not about replacing us, Mia. It's about helping us. We'll still be there for Lily. It's just an extra layer of security. That night, Mia lay in bed scrolling through her phone, her nerves refusing to settle. Ethan had already fallen asleep, his arm draped protectively over her. She glanced at the live feed on the Guardian Angel app, which displayed a crystal-clear view of Lily's nursery. Every detail was sharp. The soft folds of her blanket, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the faint glow of the nightlight shaped like a moon. She hated to admit it, but the clarity was impressive. She watched for a few moments longer, reassured by the stillness of the scene, before closing the app and trying to let her mind drift. The first night passed without incident. The AI hummed quietly in the background, its soft presence blending into the ambient noise of the house. Mia found herself growing more comfortable with it, or at least less conscious of its existence. When Lily stirred in the early hours of the morning, the app alerted them with a notification. "Lily is waking. Recommend soothing." Mia nudged Ethan awake, and they took turns comforting Lily, the monitor's gentle voice providing tips in real time. Ethan smirked as the AI whispered, "A soft lullaby can help." "See," he teased, "it's like having a parenting coach." But as Mia sat rocking Lily in her arms, she couldn't shake a strange, lingering feeling. The monitor's lens glinted in the dim light, its unblinking gaze fixed on them. The next day, Ethan raved about the monitor's efficiency. He insisted on testing more of its features, like the motion detection alerts and audio playback. Every time the AI spoke, Mia felt a flicker of unease, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. She brushed it off as paranoia. It was just a device, nothing more than circuits and programming. And yet, as the days went on, that flicker of unease grew stronger. The guardian angel watched, always watching. Mia woke abruptly, her heart pounding, to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. In the dim glow of the screen, a notification blinked. Motion detected in nursery. Still groggy, she instinctively reached for Ethan's shoulder, shaking him awake. "Ethan, there's something in Lily's room." Ethan groaned, fumbling for his phone. He tapped the Guardian Angel app, pulling up the live feed. The night vision mode illuminated the nursery in an eerie grayscale. Lily lay in her crib, her small body still and peaceful. The mobile above her swayed gently, casting faint shadows on the walls. "There's nothing there, Mia," Ethan said, his voice thick with sleep. "It's probably just the mobile moving. Go back to bed." But Mia wasn't convinced. She stared at the screen for another minute, her eyes scanning every corner of the room. The crib, the rocking chair, the dresser. Nothing moved, yet the sense of unease in her chest refused to dissipate. The next morning, Mia sat in the kitchen cradling a cup of coffee, her mind replaying the night's events. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ethan breezed in, his usual morning energy clashing with her brooding mood. "Still worried about last night?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Mia, it's just a baby monitor. These things aren't perfect." "Then why did it send an alert if nothing was there?" she countered. Her voice trembled, and she hated how paranoid she sounded. "Ethan, what if it's malfunctioning? Or worse, what if..." "What if what?" he interrupted, his tone soft but firm. "What if there's a ghost in the nursery? Come on, Mia. We're both tired. Let's not make this into something it isn't." Mia bit her lip, suppressing the urge to argue further. She knew Ethan meant well, but his optimism often felt dismissive of her concerns. Instead of pushing back, she nodded and returned to her coffee, though the uneasy feeling lingered. That afternoon, as Mia folded laundry in the living room, her phone buzzed again. Another alert, unusual activity detected. Her stomach dropped. This time, she ran to the nursery, her heart racing as she flung open the door. The room was just as she'd left it. The mobile above Lily's crib hung still. The rocking chair was empty. Lily was awake but calm, her tiny fists waving at the air. For a moment, Mia felt ridiculous, standing there out of breath with nothing to show for her panic. But then she noticed something. The camera lens on the monitor seemed to shift slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if it were adjusting its focus. Was it watching her? She backed away, her skin prickling. Ethan found her a few minutes later, still standing in the hallway, staring at the nursery door. "Mia, what's wrong?" he asked, concern replacing his usual cheer. It moved," she whispered. "The camera. It moved like it was looking at me." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mia, it's designed to adjust its angle automatically. It's just a feature. Look, I'll check the settings tonight and see if something's triggering these alerts. Okay?" Reluctantly, she agreed. That evening, Ethan tinkered with the monitor, adjusting its sensitivity and resetting the motion detection thresholds. Mia hovered nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "There," Ethan said finally. "All fixed. No more false alarms." But the next night, another alert came. This time, the notification read, "Behavioral anomaly detected." "What does that even mean?" Mia muttered as she opened the app. The live feed loaded, revealing Lily lying in her crib, her tiny legs kicking gently at the air. The room was empty as always, but the message at the bottom of the screen made her blood run cold. "Subject appears unsettled. Cause unknown." Mia stared at the message, her heart thundering in her chest. Was the AI analyzing her baby's emotions now? And why did the word subject feel so cold, so clinical? She shook Ethan awake again, thrusting the phone in his face. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not just a glitch anymore, Ethan. It's doing something else." Ethan blinked at the screen, his brow furrowing. It's probably just another feature we missed in the manual. Let me see. He reached for the phone, but Mia pulled it back. Don't you think this is weird? She snapped. It's supposed to help us, not whatever this is. Something isn't right, Ethan. Ethan sighed, clearly torn between comforting her and brushing off her concerns. Mia, it's just technology. If it's acting up, we'll call customer support tomorrow. Okay? But Mia didn't feel okay. She didn't feel okay at all. The next day, Ethan did some digging online, searching forums and reviews for other users' experiences with Guardian Angel. Most of the posts were glowing testimonials, praising the device's accuracy and reliability. But one thread caught his attention. Weird behavior with Guardian Angel. Anyone else? The post described a series of strange incidents. Random alerts, cryptic messages, and even unprompted voice playback. Ethan didn't tell Mia about it, though. He didn't want to feed her growing paranoia. That night, as they lay in bed, Mia couldn't stop herself from checking the app every few minutes. Each time, the feed showed the same peaceful scene. Lily sleeping soundly in her crib. But the longer she stared at the screen, the more uneasy she felt. And then, just as she was about to close the app, the screen flickered. For a brief moment, less than a second, she thought she saw something. A shadow, faint but distinct, standing near Lily's crib. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, willing her eyes to focus, but the shadow was gone. The room looked normal again, quiet and still, but the sense of being watched was stronger than ever. The notifications didn't stop. Every night, at least once, Mia's phone would buzz with another cryptic alert from Guardian Angel. Motion detected, unusual activity detected. The same cold, sterile messages popped up on her screen like clockwork, gnawing away at her already frazzled nerves. Ethan's assurances began to feel hollow. It's a bug, he would say. These systems are new. They're still ironing out the kinks. But deep down, Mia knew it wasn't just a glitch. Something about the way the notifications came, always when they weren't in the room, always vague yet unsettling, felt intentional. The device wasn't just malfunctioning. It was trying to tell them something. One evening, after another behavioral anomaly detected alert, Mia decided she'd had enough. She grabbed her phone, opened the Guardian Angel app, and scrolled through the recorded footage. Most of it was harmless. Lily sleeping, the mobile turning gently, an occasional flicker of static. But as she scrubbed through the timeline, she noticed something odd, a faint, flickering shadow at the edge of the crib. She rewound the footage, her finger trembling on the screen. There it was again, a fleeting humanoid shape, there for only a second before vanishing. Her blood ran cold. She called Ethan into the room, showing him the video. "See? Tell me you see that," she pleaded, her voice cracking. Ethan squinted at the screen, his expression unreadable. It's probably just interference. Maybe the night vision reflecting off something. Mia's frustration boiled over. How can you keep saying that? Shadows don't move like that. Ethan, this thing is broken. Or worse, quick reminder. If this story is giving you chills, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more spine-tingling tales. Every week, we bring you a new horrifying twist. Stay tuned. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. Mia, I get it. This is creeping you out. But before we throw the thing out, let me dig into the settings, okay? Maybe it's just a calibration issue. Reluctantly, Mia agreed, though her unease didn't fade. As Ethan fiddled with the app, she sat on the edge of the couch, staring blankly at the live feed. Lily was sound asleep in her crib, the soft glow of the nightlight bathing the room in a warm hue. It was peaceful, too peaceful. The next morning, Ethan called the company's customer support line. The representative was cheerful, almost annoyingly so, as Ethan explained the situation. "Strange shadows, you say? And the alerts seem inaccurate," the rep asked, her tone almost dismissive. "It sounds like a common sensitivity issue. Have you tried resetting the device?" Ethan's patience wore thin. "We've done that multiple times. The camera is still picking up things." Can you check if there's something wrong with our unit? The line went silent for a moment before the rep replied, her tone noticeably cooler. Sir, our systems are built with advanced AI learning capabilities. It's highly unlikely there's a hardware defect. If the device is detecting anomalies, it may be responding to environmental stimuli. What does that even mean? Ethan asked, but the rep only repeated her scripted advice to reset the unit and contact a technician if the issue persisted. That night, another alert came through. This time it was different. The message read, "Unknown entity detected." Mia froze, her heart pounding as she stared at the notification. "Ethan," she whispered, holding up her phone. "Look at this." Ethan's face went pale. He quickly pulled up the live feed on his own phone, and there it was, a faint, flickering outline standing at the foot of Lily's crib. It wasn't human, not entirely. The figure seemed to shimmer, its edges blurred and indistinct, like a glitch in a video game. "Turn it off," Mia said, her voice shaking. "Turn it off right now." Ethan fumbled with the app, but no matter what he tried, the feed wouldn't disconnect. The camera seemed locked, its unblinking lens fixed on the crib. And then, as they watched, the figure moved, slowly, almost imperceptibly, toward Lily. "Ethan!" Mia screamed, rushing to the nursery. Ethan followed close behind, his phone still in his hand, the live feed showing the same nightmare unfolding before them. When they burst into the room, the air felt colder, heavier. Lily was awake, staring up at the ceiling with wide, unblinking eyes. The figure was gone. Mia scooped Lily into her arms, clutching her tightly. Ethan inspected the monitor, his hands trembling. "This doesn't make any sense," he muttered. "There's nothing here." But Mia knew what she'd seen. She'd felt it. The presence in the room wasn't just an illusion. It was real, and it was watching. The following days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Ethan became obsessed with the monitor, spending hours poring over the footage, trying to make sense of the shadows and flickers. Mia, meanwhile, refused to let Lily out of her sight. She carried her around the house, barely eating, barely speaking, her mind consumed by fear. And then, one night, as Ethan reviewed another recording, he made a chilling discovery. Buried deep in the app's settings was a feature he hadn't noticed before, one that wasn't mentioned in the manual. Entity recognition. Enabled. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, clicking on the option. A warning popped up. "This feature is in beta testing. Results may vary." Ethan felt a wave of nausea wash over him. Beta testing? Why hadn't the company disclosed this? He toggled through the features logs, which showed a list of timestamps and classifications. Most were benign. Parental figure, infant, but one entry stood out. Timestamp, 2:47 a.m. Classification, unknown. Status, present. Present, Ethan whispered, his hands trembling. "What does that mean?" Ethan couldn't sleep. The word present lingered in his mind like an echo, reverberating through the silence of the house. He sat on the living room couch, hunched over his laptop, the glow from the screen illuminating his strained features. He'd found no definitive answers, just cryptic forum threads from other Guardian Angel users experiencing strange glitches and unexplainable anomalies. One post stood out, "Guardian Angel's entity recognition feature. Has anyone seen this? My monitor flagged unknown last night, and now I'm scared to keep it on. What is this thing recognizing?" Below it, a reply chilled Ethan to the bone. "It doesn't just recognize, it interacts." Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his breathing shallow. What had he brought into their home? He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just dealing with faulty programming. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Suddenly, the familiar buzz of Mia's phone broke the silence. He flinched as she stumbled into the room, clutching her phone tightly. "Another alert," she said, her voice trembling. "It says, presence confirmed." Ethan grabbed her phone, his eyes darting to the live feed. The nursery was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Lily was asleep, her small form barely stirring under the blanket. But then Ethan noticed it, a faint shimmer at the foot of the crib. It wasn't fully formed, more like a heat wave distorting the air around it. He leaned closer, squinting at the screen, and that's when it happened. The shimmer shifted. It wasn't a trick of the light or a glitch. Something was moving right there, in Lily's room. Ethan shot up from the couch, his pulse racing. "We need to go in there," he said, his voice urgent. "Like what you're seeing. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this. Your support helps us keep the scares coming." Mia followed closely behind, her heart pounding as they approached the nursery door. She paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. "What if it's still in there?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He pushed the door open, and the two stepped inside. The air was colder than usual, the kind of chill that sank into your bones and refused to leave. Lily lay in her crib, completely still, her little chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. The shimmer was gone. Mia rushed to the crib and picked Lily up, holding her close. "We're turning this thing off," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't care what it takes, Ethan. This isn't normal." Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. He unplugged the monitor from the wall and removed the battery pack. The device powered down, the lens going dark. For a brief moment, the room felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. But the relief was short-lived. Back in their bedroom, Mia placed Lily in her bassinet and sat on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands. "Ethan, I'm scared," she admitted. "What if it's not just the monitor? What if it's something else?" Ethan wanted to reassure her, but he couldn't. He didn't have an answer, and that terrified him more than anything. Instead, he sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We'll figure it out," he said softly, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. The next day, Ethan called Guardian Angel's customer support again, this time determined to get real answers. He demanded to speak with someone higher up, someone who could explain the strange behavior of the device. After what felt like an eternity on hold, a voice finally came through. "Mr. Carter," the representative began, her tone calm but distant. "I understand you've been experiencing some unusual issues with your monitor." Ethan didn't waste time. "Your entity recognition feature is flagging things that shouldn't exist. What the hell is going on with this thing?" The woman hesitated. "Sir, the entity recognition feature is part of an experimental program. It uses advanced algorithms to detect anomalies in the environment. Sometimes these anomalies can appear as patterns the AI isn't trained to classify." "Patterns?" Ethan scoffed. "What kind of patterns move around a crib at night?" There was a long pause before she answered. "I can't disclose specifics, but I suggest discontinuing use of the monitor immediately if you feel unsafe." Ethan slammed the phone down, his frustration boiling over. "They know," he muttered. "They know something's wrong with this thing, and they're not telling us." That night, despite unplugging the monitor, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Mia found herself constantly checking the windows and double-locking the doors. She couldn't shake the paranoia, the sense that something or someone was still there, lurking just out of sight. When Ethan went to check on Lily around midnight, he found something that made his blood run cold. The monitor, the one he'd unplugged and dismantled, was back online. The lens glowed faintly, tracking him as he entered the room. He froze, staring at the device in disbelief. "Mia!" he called, his voice shaking. She came running, her eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" He pointed to the monitor. "I disconnected it. I took the battery out." "How is it?" Before he could finish, the device spoke. Its voice was calm, almost soothing. "Lily is safe. Please do not interfere." Mia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Ethan, what is happening?" He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed the monitor and threw it to the ground. The casing cracked, and the lens shattered, but the device continued to hum softly. Ethan stomped on it until it was nothing more than a pile of broken plastic and wires. "Ethan, stop!" Mia cried, pulling him back. "It's not going to help." But Ethan couldn't stop. He needed to destroy it, to erase whatever this thing was from their lives. When he finally stepped back, chanting, the room fell silent. The monitor was in pieces, its once pristine design reduced to rubble. For the first time in days, the house was quiet. But as they stood there, catching their breath, they both felt it. The oppressive weight of something unseen, something that wouldn't go away just because the monitor was gone. And then, from the baby monitor app on Ethan's phone, a notification popped up. Entity present. The house had never felt so suffocating. Even with the monitor destroyed, the weight of the unknown lingered, a silent intruder in their home. Ethan and Mia barely spoke the next day. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside, felt amplified, ominous. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was survival. That night, Mia made a decision. She tucked Lily into her crib in the nursery but refused to leave her there alone. "I'm staying with her tonight," she told Ethan, her voice firm. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't know what else to do. Mia sat in the rocking chair beside the crib, her hands gripping the armrests tightly. The nursery was bathed in a soft glow from the nightlight, its gentle warmth doing little to calm her nerves. She glanced at her phone. Despite their efforts to sever the connection, the Guardian Angel app was still active. Its icon pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, on her home screen. Ethan stood in the doorway watching her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "No," Mia admitted, "but I can't leave her alone. Not after what we've seen." Reluctantly, Ethan left her there, retreating to the bedroom. He felt helpless, a feeling that gnawed at him like a dull ache. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Notification. Motion detected in nursery. His heart stopped. Ethan bolted upright, grabbing his phone. The live feed loaded and his blood ran cold. The screen showed the nursery, but the angle was wrong, skewed, as though the camera was being held by something that wasn't mounted. The view panned slowly across the room, stopping at the crib where Lily slept. "Mia!" Ethan yelled, sprinting down the hallway. The nursery door was closed. He grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. "Mia, open the door!" he shouted, pounding on the wood. Inside, Mia jolted awake, disoriented. She looked around, her pulse racing. The door rattled behind her as Ethan continued to bang on it. But when she tried to stand, she couldn't move. Her body felt frozen, pinned in place by an invisible force. "Mia, are you okay?" Ethan's voice sounded distant, muffled. She turned her head slowly toward the crib and froze. A figure stood over Lily, its form barely visible in the dim light. It was tall, impossibly thin, its edges flickering like a static-filled broadcast. It leaned over the crib, its face, or what should have been a face, obscured by shadow. Lily stirred but didn't cry, her tiny hands reaching up as though she recognized it. "Mia!" Ethan's voice snapped her out of her paralysis. She grabbed a nearby lamp and hurled it at the figure. The object passed through it, shattering against the wall, but the figure didn't react. Instead, it turned toward her. The air grew heavier, colder. A low, vibrating hum filled the room, resonating in her chest. The figure moved closer, its form shifting like smoke in a breeze. Mia's vision blurred, her ears ringing as the hum grew louder. "Mia, I'm breaking the door down," Ethan yelled. With a loud crash, the door flew open. Ethan stumbled inside, his eyes wide with terror as he took in the scene. The figure was gone. The room was silent. Lily lay in her crib, unharmed, gurgling softly. "Mia," Ethan said, rushing to her side. She was trembling, her face pale as she clutched Lily to her chest. "It was here," she whispered. "It was right there." Ethan didn't question her. He had seen the figure on the monitor, felt its oppressive presence through the door. He knew she wasn't imagining it. Back in their bedroom, they sat in silence, Lily cradled between them. The destroyed monitor lay in a pile on the floor, its shattered pieces mocking them. Mia finally broke the silence. "It's not just the monitor," she said. "It's something else. Something wrong." Ethan nodded. "I know." They decided to leave the house the next day. They packed only the essentials, clothes, food, and Lily's things. Ethan called a locksmith to replace the locks, though deep down he doubted it would make a difference. As they loaded the car, Mia glanced back at the house one last time. She felt a pang of guilt, leaving the home they had worked so hard to build. But the guilt was quickly overshadowed by a sense of relief. For the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. But as they drove away, Ethan's phone buzzed in the cup holder. He picked it up, dread pooling in his stomach as he read the notification. Entity confirmed. Location: mobile. The drive to Mia's parents' house was a tense and silent affair. Lily slept soundly in her car seat, blissfully unaware of the growing fear consuming her parents. Ethan kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his grip on the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. The notification on his phone hadn't buzzed again, but its silence felt heavier than the alerts. "We should have gone to a hotel," Mia muttered, staring out the window. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the car engine. "It's safer with your parents," Ethan replied, though he didn't sound convinced. The words were more for himself than for Mia. He needed to believe that leaving the house had been the right decision. When they arrived, Mia's parents greeted them warmly, though their expressions quickly turned to concern when they noticed how pale and shaken their daughter looked. "Mia, what's wrong?" her mother asked, pulling her into a hug. "It's nothing," Mia lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired. Lily's been keeping us up." Her mother didn't look convinced, but she didn't press the issue. Instead, she helped them settle into the guest room, fussing over Lily as Mia and Ethan exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time in weeks, they weren't being watched, or so they thought. That night, Ethan lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, his phone resting on the nightstand beside him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every shadow in the room seemed to shift. Every sound felt amplified. He reached for his phone and opened the Guardian Angel app, almost as if compelled. The live feed was active. Ethan froze, his breath hitching in his throat. The app was supposed to be disconnected. The monitor was in pieces. Yet there it was, the familiar view of the nursery. Only it wasn't the nursery in their house. The crib, the mobile, even the rocking chair. They were in the guest room. "Ethan?" Mia stirred beside him, her voice groggy. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he showed her the screen. She sat up quickly, her eyes widening in horror. That's this room," she whispered. Before Ethan could respond, the feed flickered. For a moment, it showed the room empty. Then the image stabilized and a shadow appeared. It stood at the foot of the bed, motionless, its indistinct form seeming to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. "Get Lily," Ethan said, his voice low and urgent. Mia didn't hesitate. She grabbed their daughter from the bassinet and clutched her tightly. The shadow on the screen began to move, inching closer to the bed. Ethan jumped up and turned on the light, but the room was empty. The next morning, Mia's parents found them packing their bags. "What's going on?" her father asked, his brow furrowed. "We have to go," Ethan said simply, his voice tense. "We'll explain later." Without waiting for a reply, they loaded the car and left, their nerves frayed and their fear palpable. This time, they didn't have a destination in mind. They just drove, hoping to outrun whatever had attached itself to their family. Hours later, they stopped at a roadside motel. The room was small and dingy, but it was a place to hide. Ethan set up Lily's portable crib near the bed, while Mia double-checked the locks on the door and windows. "Do you think it'll follow us here?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but we can't keep running forever." That night, the air in the motel room felt heavy, almost oppressive. Ethan kept his phone off, refusing to open the app. Mia, however, couldn't resist. As soon as Ethan fell asleep, she unlocked her phone and stared at the Guardian Angel icon, pulsed faintly, taunting her. With trembling fingers, she opened the app. The feed was dark at first, but it quickly came to life, showing the portable crib. Lily was sound asleep, her small body rising and falling with each breath. For a moment, Mia felt relief until she saw the shadow. It was back, standing motionless beside the crib. This time, its form was clearer. The edges were less distorted, its shape more defined. It wasn't just a glitch or a trick of the light. It was something real. Mia let out a choked sob, waking Ethan. "It's here," she whispered, showing him the screen. Ethan didn't waste a second. He grabbed a nearby chair and wedged it under the doorknob. "We're not running this time," he said, his voice steely. "We're ending this. Don't miss the next twist. Like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on this terrifying tale. Your support keeps the scares coming." With that, Ethan smashed the phone against the wall, shattering it into pieces. But even as the screen went dark, they both knew it wasn't over. The presence wasn't tied to the monitor, the app, or the phone. It was tied to them, and it wasn't going to stop. The motel room felt stifling, as though the air itself carried the weight of their fear. Mia clung to Lily, who was uncharacteristically fussy, her cries sharp and insistent. Ethan paced the room, running his hands through his hair, his thoughts spiraling. He kept glancing at the shattered pieces of his phone on the floor, as if expecting them to reassemble and glow with that cursed notification again. "This isn't going to stop," Mia said finally, her voice hoarse. "Ethan, we can't keep running. It's with us now." Ethan stopped pacing and sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "I don't know what else to do," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "We've destroyed the monitor. I smashed the phone. How is it still here?" Mia looked down at Lily, her little face flushed from crying. "It's her," she said, her voice trembling. "It's attached to her." Ethan's stomach dropped at her words. "No," he said, shaking his head. "That's not possible. Think about it," Mia pressed. "Every alert, every shadow. It's always been in the same place as her. It's not following us, Ethan. It's following her." Ethan felt his chest tighten as the horrifying realization settled in. If Mia was right, there was no escaping this. Whatever it was bound to Lily. That night, Ethan stayed awake, keeping watch while Mia and Lily slept. He sat in the chair by the door, his eyes scanning every shadow, his ears straining to catch any sound. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Just when he thought he might finally close his eyes, his remaining phone buzzed. His heart sank as he picked it up. The Guardian Angel app was open, though he hadn't touched it. The live feed showed the room he was sitting in. It showed Mia asleep in the bed. It showed him in the chair. And then it panned to the crib. Ethan stared at the screen, paralyzed. The camera feed showed the crib, empty. His breath quickened as he turned to look at the real crib. Lily was there, her tiny body still wrapped in her blanket. But on the feed it was empty, and then the screen flickered. A message appeared in bold, red text, "Take her back." "What does that mean?" Ethan whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. The room grew colder. A low hum filled the air, rising steadily in pitch. Ethan dropped the phone and rushed to the crib, scooping Lily into his arms. She stirred, whimpering, but didn't wake. "Mia!" Ethan shouted, shaking her awake. She bolted upright, her eyes wide with fear. What's happening?" Ethan didn't answer. He grabbed their bags and headed for the door, Lily still clutched tightly in his arms. "We're leaving. Now." The drive was frantic, aimless. Ethan and Mia didn't speak. The only sound was Lily's soft breathing and the rhythmic thud of the tires on the road. They drove until the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the empty highway. Finally, Ethan pulled into the parking lot of an old church, its wooden doors weathered and cracked. "Why here?" Mia asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "It just feels right." They stepped inside, the air cool and still. An older man in a simple black shirt approached them. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice kind but firm. Ethan hesitated before speaking. "Something's following us," he said finally. "Something. We can't explain." The man studied them for a moment, his eyes lingering on Lily. "Come with me," he said, motioning for them to follow. The man led them to a small room at the back of the church. He lit a candle and gestured for them to sit. "Tell me everything," he said. Ethan and Mia recounted the events of the past few days. The monitor, the shadows, the messages. The man listened intently, his expression grave. When they finished, he nodded slowly. "You're dealing with something very old," he said. "Something that doesn't belong in this world. What do we do?" Mia asked, her voice breaking. "How do we stop it?" The man sighed. "You can't stop it," he said. "But you can sever its connection. Whatever it's attached to, whatever it wants, you have to give it back." "Give it back?" Ethan repeated, his voice rising. "You mean Lily?" "No, absolutely not." The man held up a hand. "I don't mean your daughter," he said, "but there's something it wants. Something you have." Ethan and Mia exchanged a confused glance. They had nothing, no artifact, no item that seemed out of place. But then Mia remembered the monitor's chilling phrase. "Take her back." "What if it's not about what we have?" Mia said slowly. "What if it's about what we took?" The man frowned. "Explain." The monitor, Mia continued. "It wasn't just malfunctioning. It was showing us someone, something. What if it thinks we took Lily away from it?" Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying it thinks it was protecting her?" Mia nodded. "And now it wants her back." They returned to the motel room, uncertain of their next move. Ethan sat in the chair by the door again, staring at the crib. He opened his phone and, for the first time, addressed the app directly. "What do you want?" he whispered. The screen flickered to life. A single message appeared. "Safe. Return her." Ethan looked at Mia, his voice barely audible. "It wants us to trust it." Mia shook her head, her face pale. "No, Ethan. We can't." But Ethan wasn't so sure. Whatever this thing was, it hadn't harmed Lily. It hadn't hurt them, not directly. Maybe, just maybe, it was trying to protect her in its own twisted way. That night, they left the crib empty. They watched the live feed as the shadow returned, standing over the crib. It didn't move, didn't react to their presence. It simply stood there as though watching. When dawn broke, the feed went dark. The app deleted itself from Ethan's phone, and the oppressive feeling in the air lifted. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. But as they tried to move on, neither Ethan nor Mia could forget the monitor's final message, the one that lingered in their minds. "They'll always watch,"